to another episode of Ball and Chain. Today we're going to review the crypto market and where we are at the very moment in time. It's been a very, very strange November, hasn't it? Lots of ups, but mainly downs. And we've got the government open back up, so that's good news. I don't have to go to the BBC page and give you an update on that. The government's open back up. The macro environment's been very quiet, but a lot of, excitement building, if I can use that word with crypto at the moment. It's not really exciting, but it's been very much sort of sideways, hasn't it? Although, let's look on screen. Over the last 7 days, Bitcoin's up 7%, so that does show a change in sentiment, and we'll see when we look at the fear and greed index that's definitely improved over the course of the week. Is it perfect? No, but are we seeing a push in the right direction? Absolutely. So the thesis has always been, we talked about the gamble last video on are you putting it on red, are you putting it on black, what we're thinking going into December. I've been still on the fence. My view has always been it's very hard to determine whether we're still in the 4-year cycle, and traditionally what we've seen is these closers below moving averages that typically signal a bear market. And it certainly looks that way, doesn't it? However, we managed to beat 90k. I think, fingers crossed, we'll close above 90k this week. If we do that, that's a marked improvement, because I think we teetered below 80k last week. It wasn't a good week at all, was it? There was lots of fear. It's been Thanksgiving week, so happy Thanksgiving to those in the US who are celebrating, and we've definitely seen a positive week. I think next week will be very quiet. The week after, I'm expecting quite a lot of volatility, and I'll show you for why. So, over the last week, we've seen definite changes in data that's come out, and the data points really drive everything. So we had the jobless claims last week, PPI, CPI, etc. came out, and there was some quite, positive or negative, but positive news with the jobs information in the US, and similar with the UK as well, which have made markets a little bit unsure now. So over the course of December, we've got some interesting events happening. The employment report comes out on December 5th. As we know, that's a key indicator that the Fed use for determining whether to cut rates or not. They've said they're going to end quantitative tightening from December, but they've not said they're going to start quantitative easing, so QE. So QT is going to stop, but the key thing is, when is the money printer going to switch on, and when are we going to see Jerome, the money printer on? At the moment, we've got, so the employment report's going to come out with something, and we'll see what comes. CPI's on the 10th, the same day of the FOMC meeting, which is probably the most anticipated meeting of the month. So the 10th of December, expect extreme volatility on that day. Every breath that comes from Jerome Powell's mouth will definitely dictate the vibe of the market, and I expect if there's dovish comments or hawkish comments, we'll see up or down, depending. We'll see, if you look at the ratings, we saw it dramatically change. So coming into maybe mid-November, when we saw extreme fear, I think the chances of the rate cut were determined as basically a flip of a coin, sort of 50-50. Over the last couple of weeks, the sentiment's changed slightly, and people are now anticipating a rate cut of probably about 25 basis points. And I think the data's pointing towards that. It will depend on those key data points that are coming out over the next week or so as to whether the Fed will cut rates. And if they cut rates, I expect the markets to pump and have a good finish up to Christmas. If they don't cut rates, then I expect the markets to tank. And I think until quantitative easing comes into effect, I think we'll see a bear market until the money printer gets switched on. And that could be a bear market for a quarter, 2 quarters. The interesting thing is, we've talked about the notion of a 4-year cycle after the halving. Traditionally, we should have had a blow off top, unless that was the first week in October, which mainly impacted Bitcoin, took it to new all-time highs, and then it sunk back down and retraced quite significantly. Everyone's anticipating, or everyone thought, should I say, in Q4 at some point there'd be a blow off top. Still a few weeks to go. Still not giving up hope. I think this Fed meeting is going to be absolutely critical And any noises that come out of the White House are going to be critical. This week's going to be quiet. The US is largely on shutdown, isn't it? Next week they come back to work, and the week after is going to be really interesting. So I think expect a really interesting couple of weeks. Probably next week might be a bit boring. We might get sideways movement. But I think I'll try and do a video, or probably not next week, because I think, like I said, I think it's going to be uneventful. I think the week after, expect volatility, and hopefully to the positive side. So, cracking back to where we are with the markets, I'm going to break away from the norm. I'm not going to go and review every coin like I normally do. I usually go down the top 100 and pick out some plays. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to focus on Bitcoin, because Bitcoin leads and drives the market, and maybe Ethereum a little bit, the top two, because they're really the market leaders and the ones that the institutions are really piling into. However, you'll know, if you've seen in the news this week, in the last few weeks, that a lot of ETFs have launched for XRP, for Sol. So we're now starting to see those ETFs launching for some of those other coins. And that's really bringing the home the institutional buyers, isn't it? So institutions are loading up. We've seen a lot buying Sol and not many outflows, so that's been particularly positive for Solana. Same with XRP. I think that's been a big winner. XRP has got a huge following, hasn't it? Quite a militant army, and there's some really quite ridiculous price estimations for XRP. It's currently trading, I think, at around $2.2. If I'm right, we'll just scroll up and down and find XRP there. Yeah, it's 218, so very close. But it's up 11% in the last week, and I think that's been largely driven by that institutional investment. ETH up 9%, so it's cracked above $3,000. Will it stay there to the end of the week? That's a key psychological level, isn't it? $3,000. So will it stay above there? Sol again is struggling. It's up 6% in the last 7 days, but it's down 3% in the last 24 hours. XRP down 2% in the last 24 hours. Only Ethereum is holding it up. What's going to happen with those? Ethereum, it did reach new all-time highs, but it's been very uninspiring, hasn't it? It hasn't really hit the dizzy heights that I think people were talking about, 7k to 10k this market, and I think we've seen it come close to 5 has been where it's reached so far. I say so far because I'm still hopeful that we do get one last blow off top, one last pump before we see a proper bear market. However, one would argue from the technical indicators we've seen that technically we are in a bear market at the moment. Looking up and down the top 10, the one again, it's a pretty similar story between 6%. ETH is the real outlier at the moment, and XRP are the big winners. But we're seeing between 6 to 7% for the rest of the coins over the last few weeks. Doge's also have an ETF launched, which I'm quite surprised about. That's not performed particularly well, but it is up 5% over the last week. Again, the next few weeks are going to be particularly interesting, so do keep an eye. Maybe not next week. I expect it to be still quite quiet after Black Friday and Cyber Monday and all the sales happening, people spending their money there rather than on crypto. But I think as we come up to Christmas, it's going to be really interesting. The rate cut's going to obviously, or the rate not cut, is clearly going to drive the market and really drive sentiment coming up to Christmas. Some years we get a good pump at Christmas and into the new year. I suspect I'm actually, because of the government shutdown, I said this, my thesis is that we've shifted by about 45 days. And so I expect December and January to be quite bullish months. If history plays true, and then maybe after Q1 for us to really start to see the bear market come in, unless QE starts, we get the money printer switched on, and this is just a short-term bear market. We rip out the 4-year cycle, and we end up in a super cycle next year because Trump pumps everybody's bags. However, I'm very skeptical of that. I think we just got to play the market that's in front of us and play it week by week. As for me, what have I done? I've done nothing. I've literally done. I've not bought. I've not sold. I've not done anything. I am still waiting it out. I could be wrong here. I'm holding too many bags at the moment. As I said before, I need to consolidate down. Should I consolidate down to Bitcoin is the question. Should I just cash it all in, take the loss? I've not got that many gains unless I cash in some ETH. I've got some gains on ETH. But that will come nowhere near my allowances, so that tells you how poorly they've performed this year. But I think everybody's been in the same case. If you bought altcoins, unless you've been in the know, I'll have a look at crypto bubbles and I'll share some of the outliners this year. Most people have Bitcoin's outperformed everything, hasn't it, this year? Bitcoin has been the winner. The daddy's won, and therefore, if you've been in Bitcoin and you're a Bitcoin maxer, you will be the winner here, above all else, unless you've been particularly either very selective and done very, very well. Obviously, you have if it's your altcoin, or you, like me, you've struggled a little bit. I still believe in the projects that I've been putting money into, but I've hung on to legacy projects that I probably should have let go of a long time ago, but I haven't. And as a result of that, if I'd have just cycled that money into Bitcoin early in the cycle, probably would be better off. But anyway, you live and learn. It's been a year of learning this year. So that's where we are, just looking at the markets. Relatively green over the last 7 days. Let's take the positives from it. It's been a green week. And as we look at fear and greed, I'm just going to quickly jump to that. We can see that over the last week, we've definitely seen a big month. A big move. So if you look at the historical values, it's been very difficult the last few weeks, hasn't it? But today we've got still an extreme fear, but definitely moving in the right direction, moving up to 25 today. And my hope is that we're going to see that improve a lot. I'm just going to give it a quick refresh. Let's see what the data looks like now. 225, and as you can see, last month was a lot better. This month's been really challenging, hasn't it? But we are at 25, and we're seeing it go up in the right direction. Last week we were at 14, yesterday at 22, today at 25. As we glide path into that FOMC meeting, I think we'll see the fear and greed index move closer to green, and obviously on December 10th, that is going to be the day when we'll decide which way this is going to flip. If he reduces rates, I suspect we'll move towards the green. If he doesn't, it will move towards the red and maybe confirm a bear market until they meet again in the new year. But we'll see. So that's where I wanted to show. I'll have a look at the alt season indicator, because we always do. And I think this is no surprise. You've seen how Bitcoin's performed. It's performed really well against most altcoins, and therefore it's not alt season. And I think that's no surprise to anybody, is it, that we're in alt season at the moment. Okay, let's look at bubbles. And the reason why I wanted to show bubbles is because it's not been a great year for alts, has it? If you look at where we are now, we're massively down. But the reason why I put this on is because there are some outliers that have done really well this year. And if you'd invested in these coins or held these coins, you'd be in a really, really good place. So Hype has been an obvious winner that a lot of people have talked, and Zcash have been big winners this year. And AB has been a huge winner. I think that's just pumped recently. Recently, so I'm not sure what that is, and BGB. So there are some outliners that if you got into OKB, XMR, Hype, Zcash, or AB, you'd be doing pretty well this year. And I just want to show it. But look at all the red ones, and that we can scroll down, and there's huge. So there's so many outs at the moment that trying to pick that winner is just virtually impossible. And I think that's why we just have to say that the altcoin market is the most challenging it's ever been, and therefore trying to find a winner in there is like a needle in a haystack. And that's my view now. That's what I've learned this year, pretty much the hard way, really. If you go to month, again, it's a pretty painful picture, isn't it? Still reds right across the board. The month's been absolutely horrendous. The week, different picture. Very good week we've had. Let's hope that momentum continues moving over the next few weeks as we glide path to Christmas. On the daily, not been a great day for crypto, but in terms of movement, relatively quiet. 8% for Zcash and 8% for Aptos is probably the outliers, whereas most are 2 to 3% down. But at this time, if you check the markets usually, it's 7 o'clock for me in UK. Typically they're down. In the next couple of hours, it might come back up again as we come towards the close of the day. But we'll see. And in the next hour, you can see it's pumped a little bit. So again, not massive moves though. For crypto, this is nothing, is it? 0.8%, 1%, 2%. That's absolutely nothing, which is a regular day or regular hour in crypto. So no real, as I say, it's been quite consolidatory, sideways over the last few days. But as I say, we have had a good week in comparison to the previous week. So let's just hope that's cyclical, and we're going to see that positivity flow right through the market as we progress into that FOMC meeting on the 10th of December. Okay, that is just a really quick whistle-stop update today. Try to keep my videos a little bit briefer, maybe about 15 minutes today. Have a great rest of your week. I'll be in touch either before or after the FOMC. Fingers crossed time, everybody.